Well, hello again, and yes, I'm back, and it's quite interesting because I hadn't intended to speak on this particular message today, although it's quite strange because I was only reading these scriptures this morning, and I was struck with how, from the Old Testament, God does explain the day that we're living in. And what I'm going to do is I'm taking the words of the Old Testament prophet Habakkuk. I'm going to use two translations because although basically my study has been in the authorized version, and I shall come back to that, but because of the complications of the wording, I'm going to read part of it from the NIV. I'll try and tell you when. So, right, this is the first chapter of Habakkuk. And I really feel, when I read it, I was quite shocked because I just feel this is an absolute description of today, because this is taking the first verse, and I'll be in the NIV here. This is the burden which Habakkuk the prophet received. And this is his complaint. And he's saying, literally, "How long, O Lord, must I call for help, and you do not listen? Or cry out to you violence, but you do not save? Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife and conflict abounds." When we look at the world today, I'm afraid this is a description of much of the world. I don't think that we're living in a time quite in history where so many nations simultaneously are facing violence, stress, prospects of civil war. I mean, even in England at the moment, in Britain, we're facing violence on the streets, but it's the same in many places in Europe. You have the war between Israel and the Palestinians. You have changes of government. You have, I can't even list all the nations at the moment. I saw that Bangladesh, at the time I'm speaking, there was a rebellion against the president and a woman, and she had to flee by helicopter to escape the violence. It seems that people are demonstrating, but it's the violence that we're seeing on the streets. And so strangely that Habakkuk is really referring to what we've got today. Now, that's the first part. Then, if I come on to verse 5, the Lord does answer. And he says, "Look at the nations and watch, and be utterly amazed. For I'm going to do something in your days that you would not believe even if you were told." Now, this I find is quite interesting because I've recently been on my prayer mountain in Austria. And this, I didn't see this up there, but having come down and opening the Bible and studying, it's amazing that the Lord has led me to this scripture, because I believe that this literally is what God is going to do today in the age, the generation that we're living in. He says, "I'm going to do something in your days." This is not future, this is now. Something that you would not believe even if you were told. And then in verse 6 he says, I'm raising up the Babylonians, that ruthless and impetuous people who sweep across the whole earth to seize dwelling places not their own. They are feared, dreaded people. They're a law to themselves. They promote their own honor. And let me stop there for a moment. Because what we're seeing actually is something which can be identified as similar right across the world. That people are unhappy, they're dissatisfied with governments, they're dissatisfied with laws, and it does appear that there is no answer. I mean, even in Britain, there's a big controversy that the issue is not being solved. And although I'm a Christian and don't agree with the violence, I can see quite openly, being British, I can see why there is this rebellion, why there is the uprising. It's because people are not satisfied that their governments are dealing with their major issues. And in fact, I would even predict something else, and I'm going to be very careful in saying this, that we may see that even in Russia, which is, as I speak, at war with Ukraine, that the answer may not come in a victory in the Ukraine, but it may well come with an internal uprising in Russia itself, virtually a civil war, which will come from a specific area, and there can be a total rebellion against Putin. And if you actually look at Russia, and it's interesting because Russia is a major issue at the moment, but if you look actually at Russia in its history, so often after a long period of government by a specific leader, it ended with a rebellion. I mean, it started, of course, in the rise of communism 100 years ago in 1917, when there was a rebellion which came against the rulers. It took a very violent form. We know what happened. But ultimately, communism itself ended virtually in the same way, by an uprising of the people against the government. And I feel so strongly that we are seeing disturbances right throughout the world at the moment. But I will say to you that I believe that these are an indication of two things. One, that the return of Christ is near, and the other is that the Lord is saying today, to you, to me, to the world, he's saying what he said in Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 5. Look at the nations and watch and be amazed, for I'm going to do something in your days. That's our day, that's now. He's going to do something that you would not believe even if you were told.